Millionaire's wife, feared by all, until new Waitress exposed her and made her look foolish. Everyone in the elegant high-end restaurant knew of Mrs. Harrington, the millionaire's wife whose name alone could silence a room. She was feared by all, staff, managers, even some of the wealthiest patrons, because of her sharp tongue, unforgiving nature, and constant need to assert her superiority. One wrong move could earn a scolding that would leave even the most confident employees trembling for days. On a particularly busy afternoon, a new waitress named Maya walked through the grand entrance, her posture confident and her smile warm, completely unaware or perhaps unbothered by the invisible walls of fear Mrs. Harrington had erected around her. As Maya began her first shift, taking orders and serving tables with effortless charm, she noticed the hushed whispers among the staff and the wary glances cast her way. But she kept her focus, treating every guest with the same care and attention. When Mrs. Harrington entered the dining area, her presence was like a storm, cold, precise, and impossible to ignore. She scanned the room with a practiced eye, immediately noticing Maya, whose calm composure seemed almost audacious in the face of her intimidating aura. The other waiters quickly leaned over, warning Maya to tread carefully, recounting tales of staff members who had been humiliated for far less, but Maya simply nodded politely, determined to do her job properly without losing her dignity or charm. It didn't take long for a test to arrive. Mrs. Harrington ordered a highly complicated dish, demanding perfection and timing that would have stressed even the most experienced waiter. Maya, however, moved gracefully between tables and the kitchen, handling requests with precision and a quiet confidence that seemed to unsettle the usually unshakable Mrs. Harrington. When she served the meal, she noticed the expensive wine accompanying. The dish was poorly chilled and politely suggested a correction, her tone respectful but firm. For the first time, Mrs. Harrington faced someone who didn't cower under her dominance. She waved Maya off with an air of false annoyance, but inwardly she felt a flicker of uncertainty, a rare and unwelcome sensation. The staff watched in astonishment, whispering among themselves as they realized that Maya might be the first person capable of standing up to Mrs. Harrington without fear. Over the next few days, Maya continued to observe, learn, and work, all the while maintaining her professional demeanor, earning quiet respect from coworkers who had long suffered under the millionaire's wife's harsh rule. Guests began to notice her efficiency and politeness, complimenting her service, which only made Mrs. Harrington's exaggerated authority seem even more fragile. By simply doing her job with excellence, honesty, and courage, Maya had begun to dismantle the carefully constructed image of intimidation, proving that respect and composure could outweigh fear and cruelty, and that even the most formidable reputation could be challenged with confidence and grace. Mrs. Harrington, ever vigilant and eager to assert her dominance, decided to test Maya on her very first week, ordering a complex dish with endless modifications from precise cooking times to unusual ingredient combinations, fully expecting the new waitress to fumble and reveal herself as inexperienced and timid. The kitchen erupted in a flurry of activity as the chefs scrambled to keep up with the demanding specifications, knives clanging and ovens beeping. Yet Maya moved through the chaos with remarkable calm, her movements deliberate and precise, her eyes scanning each plate to ensure perfection. She approached the table with grace, balancing the dish carefully, when she noticed the accompanying bottle of vintage wine, an item Mrs. Harrington had personally requested and insisted be served at the perfect temperature. To Maya's trained eye, the wine was noticeably warm, not chilled enough to complement the meal, and she recognized the potential embarrassment that could follow if it were served incorrectly. Rather than silently placing it on the table, as any frightened employee might have done, she leaned in slightly, her voice low but confident, and said, "Madam, this wine isn't at its best temperature. Would you like me to fix it?" Her words hung in the air, and a stunned silence fell over the room, as staff and guests alike realized that for the first time, someone had dared to speak to Mrs. Harrington with candor instead of fear. the Millionaire's wife, who had grown accustomed to immediate obedience and trembling deference, froze, her poised expression faltering for a fleeting second as surprise registered in her eyes. A subtle tension crackled in the room, the kind of tension that only comes from witnessing the unexpected, someone confronting authority with confidence rather than submission. Mrs. Harrington waved her hand dismissively, pretending to be annoyed. But inside, she could feel a flicker of unease, a recognition that Maya was no ordinary waitress who could be intimidated by reputation or wealth. The other staff, who had spent days whispering warnings and cautionary tales, watched with wide eyes, unable to hide their amazement at the fearless approach Maya had taken. She had not raised her voice or challenged the wife openly, yet the quiet courage and careful professionalism in her tone had spoken volumes, subtly exposing the cracks in Mrs. Harrington's carefully maintained facade of control. Even the guests sensed it, noticing a shift in the dynamic at the table, as if an invisible hierarchy had been disrupted. Maya simply excused herself politely, walking back to the kitchen with the same composed elegance she had shown all evening, leaving behind a room buzzing with disbelief and curiosity. That brief interaction changed everything. It marked the first time anyone had truly challenged Mrs. Harrington without fear, proving that confidence, observation, and respect could confront intimidation and leave even the most formidable figure uncertain and exposed, setting the stage for the unraveling of a carefully constructed empire of fear. Days passed, and Maya continued her work with quiet observation, noting patterns in the way Mrs. Harrington interacted with the staff and guests. She saw the meticulous cruelty in her actions, the way she would belittle employees for minor errors, exaggerate small mistakes to make herself appear indispensable, and manipulate situations to ensure that all attention remained on her. The staff, though skilled and competent, often flinched under her gaze, performing tasks nervously in the hope of avoiding even the slightest criticism. Maya, however, remained composed, treating each day as an opportunity to learn and understand the dynamics at play, quietly building her knowledge of both the restaurant's operations and the personality of its most feared figure. Then came the night that would change everything. A highly anticipated dinner attended by influential clients, socialites, and business leaders, an event where Mrs. Harrington was determined to assert her dominance and claim credit for the restaurant's successes. She moved through the dining room with practiced charm, engaging in conversations, exaggerating her role in the achievements of the staff, and presenting herself as the mastermind behind every satisfied guest and every perfectly prepared dish. The other waiters and kitchen staff watched nervously, anticipating the verbal spectacle, as Mrs. Harrington basked in the admiration she assumed she would receive. Maya, having observed the patterns long enough, decided that this was the moment to act, not with confrontation or disrespect, but with calm intelligence and subtle honesty. As Mrs. Harrington spoke, embellishing facts and crediting herself for work that belonged to others, Maya approached the table gracefully, her presence polite yet undeniable. She addressed the guests directly, highlighting the hard work of the team, explaining the careful attention and skill of the chefs and waitstaff, and emphasizing the collaborative effort that had made the evening possible. Her voice was steady, professional, and respectful, drawing the guests' attention without diminishing the decorum of the event. The attendees, recognizing the truth and sincerity in her words, reacted with quiet amusement and appreciation, laughing at the over-the-top claims they had just heard, and beginning to understand the real story behind the restaurant's success. Mrs. Harrington, who had expected admiration and unquestioned agreement, felt a wave of embarrassment as the reality of Maya's gentle exposure sank in. Her face turned red, her composure faltered, and she realized for the first time that her carefully cultivated persona of authority and superiority had been subtly, yet effectively, undermined in front of those whose respect she had sought so desperately. Maya, having made her point without arrogance or aggression, stepped back and continued her service, her calm confidence leaving a lasting impression on guests and staff alike. That evening marked a turning point, proving that truth, courage, And quiet intelligence could challenge even the most imposing figure, exposing arrogance while earning genuine respect from everyone who witnessed it. From that transformative night onward, the atmosphere within the restaurant shifted in ways that no one could have predicted, subtle at first but growing stronger with each passing day. The staff who had once walked on eggshells around Mrs. Harrington, fearing her sharp tongue and unpredictable temper, began to carry themselves with newfound confidence, realizing that the power she wielded had cracks that could no longer be ignored. Even simple tasks were approached with a little more boldness, a little more assurance, as if the very air had been cleared of the weight of intimidation that had hung over them for so long. Maya, ever composed and professional, did not celebrate this quiet revolution with fanfare or boastfulness. She continued to perform her duties with the same dedication and care that had first captured the attention of everyone around her. Guests, unaware of the silent battles being fought behind the scenes, began to notice her poise, her efficiency, and her calm presence, admiring her ability to handle even the most demanding situations with grace. Compliments from patrons poured in, further highlighting her capability and earning her recognition that extended far beyond mere service. She was becoming a symbol of quiet strength and professionalism. The restaurant manager, who had long watched Mrs. Harrington's behavior with concern and frustration, finally acknowledged Maya's intelligence and insight, praising her ability to navigate complex social dynamics without confrontation, and quietly noting that her influence had begun to create a healthier, more respectful environment. As for Mrs. Harrington, the fearsome figure whose name had once silenced staff and intimidated guests alike, she found herself in unfamiliar territory. No longer could she assert dominance simply through reputation or wealth. She now had to tread carefully, aware of the young waitress who had skillfully and respectfully dismantled the facade of her authority in front of those she had hoped to impress. Each encounter with Maya reminded her that her usual tactics no longer carried the same weight, and a measure of caution replaced the arrogance that had once defined her presence. Yet Maya's triumph was not merely in exposing Mrs. Harrington. It was in the subtle, profound way she had restored dignity and courage to everyone around her. She had demonstrated that respect is earned not through fear, but through integrity, skill, and composure, and that authority built on intimidation could be transformed when met with calm confidence and thoughtful action. Over time, the restaurant became a place where employees felt valued, guests felt genuinely served, and the culture of fear that had long dominated was replaced by one of mutual respect. Maya had not only served meals with care, she had served courage, self-respect, and an example that would linger far beyond the confines of the dining room. In the end, fear lost its grip, arrogance was humbled, and respect, hard-earned and genuine, was firmly restored, proving that a single person, armed with confidence, intelligence, and quiet determination, could change the dynamics of an entire world around them.